Hello and welcome to episode 108 of the Wasps podcast. I'm Kevin Gallagher and I'm joined again by Kieran Mooney. Kieran, how are you today?
I'm good, Kev. I'm glad you introduced yourself because if you didn't say your name, I might have forgotten it. It's been that long. Like, you've lost your cable for your microphone. I had to dust off the old laptop. 108. It's good to be back. First time since April. Unbelievable.
It's only been 3.5 months. I almost forgot the name of the actual podcast there, so that was a good start. I mean, not much has happened the last 3.5 months. I think since the last time we were on, we have pumped Steny, then blew it against Kelty, missed out in the playoffs. We've had the close season, we've had a retained list, then we've signed some players, we've started preseason, we've had preseason friendlies, League Cup group campaign that we're part of the way through. We've got the draw for the KDM Evolution Trophy, or whatever the Challenge Cup is now called. The women's team are back in action as well in pre-season's friendlies. I think it's fair to say we've got a fair bit to get through.
Yeah, what are you doing for the next 12 hours to chat through all that? Lots of highs and lows. I think last season was obviously ended in disappointment, and it's been a summer of waiting and anticipation, but seems like the perfect time to record this off the back of the last couple of weeks. It's a really exciting week for the Wasps as they go into a crucial game against Airdrie on Saturday in the League Cup, and there's a lot of exciting things on the horizon for the podcast and for both men's and women's team as well. So we'll make up for lost time, won't we?
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get to the League Cup campaign in a second, because I think that's the big positive so far for the last couple of weeks. But I'll go back to the end of last season. We never got a chance to kind of record to kind of sum up the season and kind of talk over how it finished up. It was obviously, I think, for everyone, it was a big disappointment. The final day away to Kelty, the defeat there. It was great to see so many supporters who travelled through for it as well and got absolutely sunburnt in the sunshine there at New Central Park. But it kind of, that game almost kind of summed up the entire season in one. It almost, as disappointing as it was, it almost felt fitting that that's the way that last season kind of ended, and the bit of optimism, but ultimately it was a little bit of a letdown.
You've stumped me, because I was all ready to wax lyrical about the Premier Sports Cup campaign, and you've taken me back to Kelty Hearts. The day at Kelty Hearts was frustrating. It's the fine margins. I think if you say you win that game, you can look back at the season in a completely different light had we made the playoffs, and that's how tight the league was. But there's no denying that it was a disappointment to not make the playoffs, and I think that will hopefully that will fuel the players going into this season, because it's been a while since we've missed out on the playoffs. We've been now in League One for quite a while. I think we're the longest serving team alongside one other, Montrose, for League One status, but we've very rarely, I think just once, missed out on the playoffs prior to that. So a lot of these players won't know how that feels, and sometimes it takes a little bit of disappointment to kickstart the fire again, and it's a largely the same group of players, and by all accounts in the last couple of weeks they definitely seem buoyed going into next season. So yeah, it was disappointing, but I think I'd just about forgotten it until you brought it back up. So
well, you've nicely kind of led in there to the players, the squad itself. Kind of takes us through the next part after the season had ended. We've obviously seen the retained list coming out. That's kind of dragged on a little bit through the post-season as we kind of waited on. We knew some players were obviously re-signed, some had left, others were offered deals, and we're obviously assessing what options they had. As you said there, we are going into the squad with going into the year with a very, very similar squad to what we had last year. I'm going to shamelessly steal from Nary's Toe Poker, absolutely brilliant site for following the ins and outs of squads within Scottish football. Looking at the kind of the out list, players that have left from last season: PJ Morrison going to sign in for Cliftonville, Morgan Neal signing for League Two Dumbarton, Mikko Virtanen has, by the looks of things, now signed for Elgin City. And then we've seen as well the loan signings ending of Charlie Dewar, Josh Gentles, Scott Honeyman going back to Falkirk, Magnus McKenzie going back to Queen's Park. And then a couple other ones. We've seen Kane Thompson, I believe, was offered, I'm sure it was announced that he was offered a new deal, but hadn't signed anything. I believe he potentially was on as a trialist for the Beanos on Saturday night. And of course, the other player that has left the squad, it's an end of an era. Kevin Colley retiring at the end of last season.
Yeah, a lot of notable names in there. We've waxed lyrical about Kevin Colley, but we're not going to get many more opportunities across this season. So, yeah, big credit to him. Big thank you as well. I think he battled going off of his interview with Chris, which I thought was a really nice interview.
Yeah, it was.
It opened the door into some of the battles that he's had off the pitch with injuries, and it would have been nice had he had the moment at Kelty, had the team maybe been in a better position in terms of scoreline to get him back on, but it didn't sound like he was expecting it. What a player. So many great memories, and yeah, we could spend many of this podcast talking about him, but he's one player to pluck out from that list. I think the other most notable one is PJ Morrison.
Yeah.
Thankfully, it seems like we've replaced him pretty well, but fair play to PJ. I think he had his doubters. He had moments where he was struggling in the Alloa team, and you seen a guy come into the fore, and PJ Morrison, he worked with Neil Parry, he got back into the squad, and he was my player of the year last season if I was to cast a vote, and quite right, earned his move to full-time football, and I think some sort of European football as well with Cliftonville in terms of qualifiers. So that's what you want to see in terms of players moving on, and I think he'll definitely go on and do well over there. Morgan Neal, Mikko Virtanen, probably was about time just to free up some space elsewhere. I think the only one that I was slightly disappointed that we've not quite seen him return yet is young Charlie Dewar. I believe the strategic partnerships might have a little bit of a hindrance on trying to get players. I talk a load of rubbish because he's not actually Scottish, so that won't have any effect on the strategic partnership at all. I completely forgot about that. So he was one of the loan players. Him and Josh Gentles were ones that they departed, and you know they're departing, but there's still those loan spaces. So is the door potentially open for them to come back? I would not be totally opposed to that. So we'll see what the rest of the transfer window brings. I know young Josh is on the bench at Ibrox tonight, so clearly players that are going to go on and do good things, and I think even the ones that have dropped down the divisions in terms of Morgan and Mikko, again, they'll do well. I think every single one of them that's left is more than capable of playing at the level. It just needed some freshness in some areas, and some players have earned better moves, so fair play to them.
Yeah, I agree with what you're saying there. It kind of leads me on as well to I suppose then talking about the players that have stayed. I'll be quite open and say I was surprised as many were re-signed as there was, but I caveat that with I think it's important there's a balance. It says to fellow supporters watching I think it was the Wraith Rovers friendly with a couple of weeks back, that I probably personally maybe was a bit surprised to see so many retained, but then at the same time I looked at it and I thought, would I like to be going into a season and saying, look, we need to sign probably 9, 10, 11 players here really for a squad? No is the answer to that. So I suppose that's the balance with it. I think in general, I think most of the players that were re-signed, I think in general pretty for. I reckon there was two areas that maybe stood out for me. One, Luke Donnelly. I think that's been, that was a kind of view across a lot of supporters as well. Would have retained Luke Donnelly? I honestly don't know. I think LD is capable of doing things that no other player in the Alloa squad, and a lot of the time no other player in the division is capable of doing. I'm thinking back to his couple of goals at home against Annan that were just absolutely incredible, and you look at that team and there's no one else in that team that could have done those kind of things. But then I balance it with there's a lot of time when LD goes, not so much that he goes missing, but he's just not at that level, and it's my kind of thought is can you afford to carry LD for those games where he's not at that level? Can we afford that for then those times where he is just, completely and utterly unplayable at times? So he was probably one that I would have questioned. The other one for me was in central defence. We obviously David Devine and Dave Mackay were both re-signed. I think maybe for me, I possibly might have looked to keep one of them. I think Morgan Neal moving on. I did agree with that move. I wasn't massively surprised with that change, but I felt with Dave Mackay and David Devine, I possibly would have kept one of two. But then it goes back to that argument, that balance of I really don't want to be, I wouldn't want us looking to basically be building a completely and utterly new team. But you looked at the defence, who obviously shipped quite a lot of goals last season. Well, it felt like we did. I think when you look at the stats, it wasn't horrific, but the defence was at times a little bit questionable. And you look how many of the defence have been retained. I think that's where the questions start to get asked on it.
Yeah, I think gone are the days where you see part-time teams having such high turnover.
Yeah.
I think if you go back 15 years, it would be pretty normal to see 10 departures and an equal amount of incomings as well. But a lot of the teams in and around our league have got such a strong core of players that have stuck. And I think that's why you've seen these guys all stick around. It's a strong core, and it's just adding those extra elements that we're hopefully going to talk about in a second with some of the incomings. Consistency, I think, is what the manager's looking for, and hopefully we can get consistency in terms of these players turning up every week, in terms of being fit. And I think that's one of the biggest things when you look at that retained list. When you look down at Stephen Hetherington, Curtis Roberts, Dave Mackay, Callum Waters, David Devine, all quality players, but unfortunately weren't able to get a full run in the team last season with injuries and knocks and niggles. If you do keep them all fit, then you do start to have a really, really strong core that, the previous year was so strong, with just that extra kind of element of stardust in the loan market. So you can see the manager's thinking in terms of keeping consistency and teammates and a strong core, and hopefully he'll be hoping anyway that these players can stay fit, because you've already seen the difference in having, especially the two midfielders in there. It's been 100%. A marked difference. And if you think back to the first half of the season in terms of the level that David Mackay was playing at, and then you think to how good David Devine is on his day as well. He's just unfortunate with his injuries. These are the things that Andy will be hoping are just a wee bit more consistent in terms of fitness and availability. It is a big list for a retained list, but like you say, the more that you dive into it, you realise that that's your core, and you still have plenty of room for incomings. And that's where you've seen, now in the last kind of couple of weeks, you've started to see four or five getting added, and then there's still space to just add that extra bit of stardust in the loan market, which is what we talk about every season. Yeah. We talk about keeping that core of hard-working players with quality, and then landing slightly lucky, doing your work, landing a Bobby Wales or a Taylor Stephen, and that's what takes a really good, solid League One team to a promotion candidate League One team, and hopefully we've got that coming into this season.
Yeah, I completely echo what you said there about I think the fact that we'll come on to the League Cup shortly, but it's obviously it's went well. It's went well so far. Performances, I think the performances have improved game by game, but certainly the results, it's 3 games, it's 3 wins. You couldn't have asked for much more than that. And I think what you've said there is spot on. The fact that you've seen on Saturday you had Skugel, Curtis Roberts, Stevie Hetherington. That was your starting 3 in the middle of the park. And you look back to last season, how often, if any, point last season was that actually our starting 3 in the middle? And that is for me, that is our strongest first choice midfield 3. So I think right now the only player we've really not seen in this preseason at all has been Luke Donnelly. Other than that, we've seen everyone else. I do like the fact that Andy's talking about David Devine and talking about Stevie Hetherington about managing their game time, their kind of return to football protocol. I like how that's getting talked about, because it's obviously the fact he's talking about it, you're seeing it on the park as well, and that's good to see, because as you look at it there, as you're saying, those kind of players, when you look at if everyone was fit for the entire season, and you look at the squad that they've got there, you think that's a more than serviceable kind of core of the base of a team. And you're only looking at 1 or 2 here or there maybe to add in, as you say, whether it's loan markets, whether it's a a kind of left field type signing from a university type team, those kind of things, just to add to that. Obviously, through the season, you don't know what's going to happen with injuries, and look, we could have something similar to last year that may happen, and I really hope it doesn't. But it's you are seeing the kind of the fruits of the labour, so to speak, of it just now, that the way that they're playing, the results that they're getting, and I think the feeling around the club and the feeling around the support. We talked off air just before we started recording about what a difference a week and a half or 2 weeks can make, because there was a bit of a, there was a feeling of gloom, and the way the season finished last season obviously adds to it missing out on the final day. But I think there was that feeling for a large part of last season. And then into the close season, we didn't hear an awful lot about what was going on, and I think that then adds to it when there's a bit of a sort of doom and gloom type feeling. It doesn't take much for that to escalate. The fact then we've seen the players coming back, we've seen a couple of signings coming in, and now we're seeing some more than decent results in some respects on the pitch. All of a sudden, within the space of 2 weeks, I certainly feel the mood around the support has certainly moved up a couple of gears from where it was.
Yeah, I think so, and I think it's no secret that this summer was tough for supporters. I mean, this podcast, we went into hiding. We didn't know what to do. No, we were busy working. But I think that's the thing behind the scenes with Andy and the team. He's clearly been working hard with his recruitment. We can talk about the signings in a second, but it was just that sense of what was happening, and the more murmurings went on, the more that negativity started to creep out. And I think what we started to see in the last couple of weeks is the football do the talking, which is really nice. You're starting to see, you spoke about the defence, you're starting to see everything that they've worked on in pre-season, because there's slight tweaks in terms of positional senses and all that sort of stuff, and we look really solid. You're starting to see the new signings come more and more into it, and there's been a good few standouts of new boys as well. So now we're starting to get the football back, and folk can be encouraged and can be motivated for the season ahead, and that can only be a good thing. I think the feeling of how the season ended, and then just kind of going into this period of silence and this unknown, wasn't as productive as we maybe would have liked it to have been. But hopefully we'll start to see that change as well with things at the club. And like I say, if they can continue to show those sorts of performances and that grit and that determination and that quality as well, then that's only going to buoy the supporters. We may as well dive into some of those new signings. Yeah. I suppose we will speak about the League Cup as we talk about the signings, because they have played a key part. But we have made moves in the transfer market. We have replaced our goalkeeper by signing Liam McFarlane to go in between the sticks. Outfield-wise, we've signed Owen Foster, recently released from St Mirren. He's slotted in at right back. We've had the very welcome return of Daniel Church as well. Yet to see him too much. We've not seen too much of him just now, but he is back in the building and getting back fit. Calvin Orsi, a familiar face from many times that we've played against his teams in the past, has signed on the wing. The unknown of Andrew Clark has also come in, something that I'm really excited about seeing as well. So you've got a nice variety of signings there. You've got that complete unknown, of which we are still waiting to see the first of Andrew Clark, for example. And then you've got the really tried and tested, familiar Calvin Orsi, Daniel Church. You've got that sprinkling of youth in Owen Foster. And then arguably one of the most notable signings so far in terms of his performances in the League Cup. You've got a very astute replacement for PJ Morris and Liam McFarlane. He's been excellent since coming in.
Yeah, I would say what I've seen of, what I've seen of all of the signings so far. Obviously, I've not seen Andy Clark and only a little bit of Churchy, but certainly they've done well. They've contributed so far. The standout so far for me has been Liam McFarlane. I think I love Philly Guy. I think we are big fans of Philly Guy on the podcast, and I think in terms of going into the league campaign as with Phil as your backup keeper, more than serviceable as a backup keeper. We've seen him times it's came in. The game down at Annan is the obvious one that stands out so much when a man of the match performance to to essentially save us a point in that match. Absolutely more than serviceable as a backup keeper. But you look at those couple of pre-season games, the heavy defeats to Livingston and Wraith Rovers, and there was a little bit of concern, if we're going to be going into the season as Phil is potentially our number one. Yeah, it's a little bit worrying with that. Obviously, don't know what's going to happen through the season, but we brought in Liam McFarlane on loan from Hearts. Obviously, had a very, very good season last year with East Fife as they got promotion through the playoffs from League Two. I believe he was in the SPFL League Two Team of the Year as well last season, and I have been hugely impressed with him so far. In terms of games that I've actually, I was at the Bonnyrigg game, but I've missed him in Trowes in the Dundee game, so I've seen only highlights of the other two games. But even the Bonnyrigg game, straight away, seen him warming up just after his warm up as he was coming in to get changed. I was standing right next to where the change rooms were, and first impression was he's a big fella. He is a big fella. So that ticked a box for me right away. But then game starts and he's down at the other end, standing behind the goals when Luke Rankin beautifully lobs in the opening goal of the season. He's down at the other end of the park and I can hear him. And it was one of the things for me that I was critical of PJ was you can never hear the guy, even standing behind the goals at Hawkhill Road End at the Rex when PJ was there. You never really heard him. He didn't come across as a very sort of vocal. And I know that's maybe it's maybe not the most important part of goalkeeping and what you're looking for a goalkeeper, but that a vocal goalkeeper instantly fills me with a bit of confidence. And I kind of feel as if I'm playing against that, if I'm an attacker and I'm hearing that key, if it's through ball or whatever that I'm chasing down against the and I can hear that keeper coming, it's in the back of my mind straight away. Whereas I always felt with PJ, he never had that presence through his kind of communication. So that stood out. I thought certainly in that game looked good coming for his crosses. He also looked a decent shot stopper as well. And that was the one area really with PJ where PJ was excelling. The shot stopping ability, particularly last season, was excellent with PJ, and that for me is the big bit that we could potentially miss is how good a shot stopper he really became. But Liam McFarlane looks a decent mould as well, and for such a big guy, he gets down really well as well. Montrose Gate again, another good performance. On Dundee game didn't look like he overly had much to do. To be fair to them, tipped one over near the start. It was about all he had to do all day. But he's stood out for me so far. I think that looks an astute signing.
Yeah, there's not really much more to add. I've been equally as encouraged. It's one of those signings that very quickly it's something that you don't need to worry about. And I think that's the big thing when losing somebody of the calibre and the reputation of PJ Morrison at such an important position, and to have Liam McFarlane in looking as good as he is, and then a guy as a more than capable understudy in competition as well. I think it's really good business. I'll take a quick glance over the rest of the signings just briefly. I've been really impressed by Owen Foster in the last couple of games. I think he's looked really brave on the ball. It's very similar ilk and very similar journey to young Kane Thompson, and he's slotted in and fearless, I think, is the word that I would describe him in terms of the way that he takes the ball, receives it, looks to drive forward, can play in the centre half position as well. So that's something that I'm really excited. I always like to see Alloa giving these young players an opportunity off the back of the exit trial, so that's really exciting to see. Calvin Orsi, I think, is another one who will be a really good squad player for Alloa. I don't think he's going to come in and be the top goal scorer. I don't think he's going to come in and get you 15 goals and 10 assists, for example. But
I'll come to that in a minute.
Yeah, I have seen that comment online. But what he will do, he's an experienced player in this division, which I think is invaluable in terms of bringing that experience into the team. He is so fit. Like, when I've been watching him the last couple of games, the amount of work that he does, physicality as well, speed, pace, power. I didn't quite appreciate that as an opposition fan, but watching him, especially when he's, you see him next to some of the slighter players, our playmakers in Skugo or those sorts of guys. He offers you something as an out ball. He offers you legs, and I think those are the type of players that you need in your squad, and hopefully we can see him add some goals and numbers and assists to his game, but you're going to see so much more in terms of what he does off the ball and on the ball as well. I think he'll be a decent option. And like you say, there's a sense of unknown with the other couple of signings. Daniel Church is back. Not seen him really play at all since. Personally, I've not seen him play since he left Alloa. I think he played once against us at Palmerston. I've got a vague recollection of, but I know he's had a injury riddled couple of years, and hopefully coming back to Alloa in a familiar environment, dropping back down to part-time, that will be beneficial to him. It gives Callum Waters some competition, it gives him rotation as well, but interestingly with Churchy, I probably see him as an option for left centre-half as well.
Yeah.
That's where I think he was best at Alloa, in that back three, back five, so that's just another option you've got in there. And like you say, when you are managing the minutes of a David Devine or a Callum Waters, and equally, if you're managing minutes of Churchy, if he manages to get into the first team as well, you've got plenty of options. So I think it's a match that makes sense, and it's a good player to have into the squad. And then I don't really have much to add on Andrew Clark, other than I'm very excited and very intrigued as to what he can bring. It's a signing that we don't see very often at Alloa, and it's just that total unknown. And I'll just love the fact that he's been given the number 7 as well. He's got, I'd say he's got big boots to fill, but I suppose he's literally not got big boots to fill in Kevin Colley, but metaphorically massive boots to fill. But exciting, different, exciting. The markets that we should be looking at. We spoke about how off-air the League 2 and the Lowland League is becoming so saturated and so inflated with money that we can't even there's some clubs in League Belows that we can't compete with financially. Let's try something different. Let's go abroad. Let's bring in different guys, and Andrew Clark certainly fits that bill in terms of the experience that he's had with Linfield. I'm really hoping that we get to see more of him in the coming weeks, because that is something that if you listen to what the guys are saying about him that have maybe seen him play or have maybe been part of his journey, it's certainly exciting.
Yeah, I echo that. In terms of the other guys, Owen Foss, I only seen him, very, very briefly the Wraith Rovers game, and then I caught a little bit of the civil service game, so it'd be unfair for me to comment. Certainly it sounds positive from the Montrose and the Dundee games, so it seems like he's kind of really settled in there very, very quickly, and kind of got off to a bit of a flyer. Interestingly, noting that he's went in at right back and it's moved Tags inside to centre half. You know how much of a fan I am of moving Tags into centre half, so certainly not against seeing that happen. Calvin Orsi, I've been impressed with. I think from times when we've went up against him, particularly at Dumbarton, he's always been a bit of a pest, but you've never really seen him as a goal threat. So that's why I was laughing when you were saying about not going to see the 50. I think when you look at his career stats, he isn't a natural goal scorer. I noticed in the Bonnyrigg game in the second half, when Samo came on for Luke Rankin, I think it was, Andy pushed Calvin Orsi up pretty much as a striker, and again in terms of the kind of goal scoring, you could kind of see right away he's not a natural finisher. He's definitely not a natural finisher. But I will say he links up the play really well. And I thought in that game when he moved centrally, I thought that's where he was actually better in that game when he was centrally, because he was just constantly bringing other players into it. I do like as well, definitely not afraid to take a man on and we'll go past the man. And you mentioned there about someone to kind of take you up the pitch. I could see Calvin Orsi 100%.
Yeah,
he'll carry the ball and he'll pick it up deep and he'll carry the team up the park. I can absolutely see that from him. Also noticed as well, he's not afraid to get back and help out his fullback as well. And the height is massive. He's absolutely massive.
He's big in all accounts. He's just like strong and he's tall.
Massive. And you can, and it's not. We are not a tall side.
Yeah.
When you look at us defending corners, it might get a little mention. David Devine is a tall centre half. Obviously, as I said, Liam McFarlane is a decent size as well. Samo, if he's on, there's height there, but other than that, Cammy's good in the air. But other than that, there's not a lot of height in that in that side. I would say little bits I've seen of Owen Foster in the friendly. He looks quite a tall defender as well, so that'll certainly help in that respect. But being able to bring Orsi back, for set pieces, adding that height in there, and then the fact that when we win the ball back, I would probably be looking at him, as you said, he's going to be an outlet, get us back then, take us back up the pitch. So yeah, I've been impressed with Orsi. I think when he was signed, it was a kind of a bit of a mess signing. He's obviously played for a team that have been relegated. And I know they had their off field issues, but they were getting relegated anyway, even without the points deductions. And I kind of looked at that Dumbarton side, and there was a couple of other players that I would have really fancied from it, and Orsi might not have been one of those. But I think he's done well since he came in.
It's interesting because when Calvin Orsi signed, if you had told me, if you'd given me 5 guesses and not even telling me the team of players that we would have signed, I think I would have picked Calvin Orsi. He just seems like such an Alloa signing. I just feel like
I played for Dumbarton. So.
Yeah, that's it. It just feels like we've already had him in the past. But I've been equally impressed by him. He's brave as well, and throwing his head in places and putting his body on the line. Like you say, he just mucks in, and I think that's what you need. You need somebody that's gonna. It's such a demanding physical league, and Calvin just gives you something different, and that's what we cry out for at times when we're trying to change the games and change the dynamic up front. We've got lots of nice, intricate midfielders. We've got youth. We've got sheer pace, and then Calvin just offers something different again. So I think it's a good option to have, and that's what you need. You just need variety and trying to win games across the season.
Yeah, 100%. And Churchy, I don't have any issues with it with the Church. I think it's a balance with Churchy, and again, it probably I was talking about how a little thing can have can make a sort of have a big impact on the way people are feeling. I think at that point, when obviously we seen Churchy had been in as a trialist, and then we signed him, it was obviously off the back of. There was a bit of doom and gloom about the place, and part of that was we looked at the retained list, and you mentioned earlier about guys who missed a lot of time last season, likes of David Devine and Callum Waters in particular. I'm thinking of as defenders, and then we're bringing in Churchy, who I think he's maybe played a dozen games in the last 2 years, so he's obviously coming with 2 really bad years of injury issues. So I think that was on a lot of people's mind, myself included. You kind of think you've got a player there in Callum Waters who's missed significant time last season, and we're bringing in another player in the same position who has missed significant time for the last 2 seasons. I think if you get Daniel Church fit, and you get what we've seen from his second season with us under Brian Rice, then it's a great signing.
Yeah,
when we've seen him flying up from sort of left wing back, chipped in with a couple of goals, but he was getting assists as well, and you're really looking for that from your fullbacks. But as you said, the fact that when we then switched to sort of back 3 or back 5, we were able to utilise him as a left kind of central, left-sided kind of centre back, and I've seen that obviously in the pre-season friendlies. He's came on and played at centre half as well. If I remember right, it was more as a 2, but I do think it opens up that option that if you're going to 3 at the back, well, there's your kind of your left-sided of the centre halves probably right away.
Yeah.
And then whether you work in that you can keep a Callum Waters on, or maybe you see say a Cammy O'Donnell as more of a winger, or a Calvin Orsi, I think it gives you that option as well. The worry is obviously the injuries, and I think when you looked at Church's first season under Barry Ferguson, that's the other side to it, and I'm hoping that's not what we see, because certainly what we've seen in his second season, that's more than serviceable for a League One campaign. So yeah, no issues with that signing. And then Andy Clark, I'm the same as you, dead excited. Excited about this one. It's a player that's Champions League qualifiers experience. A player that's played European football. As you say, how often do we get that at Alloa? So he's coming with. It's strange, but for an unknown player, he's coming with a hell of a pedigree just from his kind of his stats. Obviously, he's studying medicine at university as well. I think my comments at the time maybe a little bit unfair on the players, but great signing for the medical side of things given what happened last year as well. But I'm dead excited about this. The whole unknown of it, as you say, is something different, something to get excited about. and it could be an absolute masterstroke. We've seen Montrose have had pretty decent success, I would say, from the university market. They've looked to utilise it a fair bit. I think I'd say that they've had more positives than negatives. They've had a couple of misses there as well, but they certainly have got some rewards out of it. So it's quite nice to see us going into this different route.
And I think it's not just the university career path that you touched upon. It's all the stuff that he did over in Ireland as well. This is a guy that's got decent experience under his belt, early 20s, and it's really exciting. There's literally nothing really to go by. Don't know how he's. They don't know how he's going to be deployed. First, I thought he was a winger. Now I'm maybe thinking he's a number 10. We'll find out. He's not quite made the bench yet. I've seen him on the Tuesday night, seen him out doing warm-up drills and with the guy with LD, and I think Stevie and David Devine were doing it on Tuesday with him as well. So can't be too far away. He's obviously joined the squad late, so he's not had the luxury of the pre-season games. But it's a bit of a curveball, and I don't think anybody, if we don't really know what's going on with him or what he plays like, then it's going to be just that element of surprise for our opposition and our defenders as well that we come up against. So I'm really excited to see him hopefully make his debut in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, totally agree. He's the one that's, as I say, Liam McFarlane, I've been impressed, but I'm most excited about seeing Andy Clark starting. So yeah, we'll see what happens in the next few weeks. Guess it takes us into what's been happening on the park then. If you can remember back to June, it was kicked off the season with the Stirlingshire Cup, new format to it this season. 2 groups of 3 played in games of 1 day, 60-minute games, I think it was even. Seen a 0-0 draw with Falkirk and lost out on penalties, and then beat East Stirlingshire 2-1 with a familiar face on the score sheet in that one in the shape of John Robertson. Took us into then the pre-season friendlies, a 3-1 defeat to Livingston, a 4-1 defeat to Wraith Rovers. There was also a behind closed door game against Civil Service, which, if I remember right, I think we won 2-0. I think Luke Rankin and Churchy scored a volley in the second half.
Yeah, good tests in pre-season. I think you can go through pre-season, you can play against teams of a much lower calibre and potentially boost your confidence. But we went and the most notable games, we went and played Livingston and Wraith Rovers, 2 well drilled. One's a Premiership, others a high-end Championship full-time teams. So hard when you're mixing in with trialists, and there's a lot of young boys playing as well. So we did take a couple of heavy defeats, and potentially that added fuel into the worry of the season, but it's clearly put us in good stead because the players have got up to speed a lot more. I never really looked too much into pre-season in terms of results or anything like that. It's always interesting to see who the trialists are, and to me, the best part of pre-season was the fact that John Robertson came and scored. He didn't just turn up. He came and got on the score sheet as well, because he didn't score that much when he was with Alloa. So the fact that he's played 60 minutes and ended up on the score sheet was pretty good to see. And I've seen he's now been picked up by a club as well, which is
Broxburn.
Yeah, I think so. So that's class. There was a couple of supporters genuinely said he'd be all right as a squad player, wouldn't he? And we're not quite getting the full band back together, but that to me is not as daft. That's not the right word, but it's just as random as it was. Class to see Robbo back in the Alloa colours and on the score sheet.
I'll give you what my highlight of pre-season was. Steak pie in Kirkcaldy. Oh my word, they were so good. I had one before the game, and it was so good I went for a second one at half time. That will not be. That's my big call for the season. That will not be beaten this season in terms of football scran. An absolute outstanding steak pie from Wraith Rovers. But yeah, I'm the same as you. I think with the pre-season games, the trial list is the big thing for me, looking to see who was there, and I struggled really to identify who any of them were. Obviously picked up that Joe Ellison was one of the. I actually thought Joe Ellison centre half, despite the fact he played in. He came in as a sub against Livingston, but he played. It might have played the 90 minutes actually in the Wraith Rovers game. Despite it being heavy defeats, I actually thought he looked he looked all right. It looked like you could tell straight away that he'd obviously came through a decent academy system. But I noticed there when I was looking at the ins and outs of teams, I noticed he's down as being signed for Stenhousemuir now. So
Fair.
I did wonder because he, after the Wraith Rovers game, I don't know if he played in the civil service game or not, but he just kind of disappeared. He wasn't trialists are allowed in the League Cup this year, but he hadn't been involved as a trialist. So I did wonder where he'd went, but it looks like he may have been picked up by Stenhousemuir. But I did think he looked pretty decent. There was a left back, and it's still annoying me now because he looks so familiar, and I think because of his hair, he looks quite distinctive. And I cannot, for the life of me, I couldn't work out at all who this left back is. So I'll be keeping an eye out just to see if he rocks up with anyone this season. But you mentioned before we were talking about Calvin Orsi about the experience. That was actually one of the things I have liked about Orsi coming in. Is I think when you looked at those guys and all the trialists, and it was all these young guys. There was a little bit of worry there, the fact that they were complete unknowns, and I think then when you seen Orsi coming in, I actually felt a bit of reassurance from that. This is a guy who has played at this level. It's a guy who's played a number of games, has that experience. So I did think that was part of the good reason for getting Orsi in. But yeah, the preseason for me, the trialist, and then kind of looking for sort of patterns of play of maybe things that had maybe been worked on, and I would say, to be honest, I hadn't really seen that, and I think that maybe gave me that little bit of worry going into the League Cup campaigns, because I know a lot of people see the League Cup group campaigns as glorified friendlies. I'm the opposite of that. They're the ones that I do put value in, and I take a lot out of the League Cup games. And let's roll straight into them. 3 wins out of 3. Could not ask for a better way to start the season.
Yeah, it's been excellent. It's been excellent. We've seen, in terms of a team, we've seen a really well organised team, defensively solid. We've only conceded 1 goal across the 3 games, and that was from a set piece. But apart from that, we've managed to keep Bonnyrigg at bay, and then obviously more notably the Premiership team in Dundee, we've managed to keep them at bay. So I think that's what's impressed me the most, is just the solidity of the team, how cohesive that unit looks as a defensive unit. And that's probably a nice place to start in terms of how this slight tweak, especially in the last couple of games, of how that's looked. We've seen Taggart move into centre half, we've seen young Owen Foster go into right back, and that's something that we spoke about quite a lot in terms of Scott Taggart. He's not as fast as what he once was, but my goodness me, he is a fantastic footballer. He is so intelligent, and I think he could still play it right back across the season, and I do see him moving back in there for majority of it. But it's an interesting dynamic, because I think positional sense, he's very, very comfortable. What I really liked, especially against Montrose, was his distribution as well from the back, in terms of just piercing that back line with the runs of Rankin, with the runs of Orsi. So he's got that kind of quarterback style. He'll step out. He's comfortable on the ball. I really liked him at centre half, and then it's obviously allowed Owen Foster, who I've spoken about before. I think that looks defensively, that looks a decent change, and whoever's partnered him, whether it's been Devine or Mackay, both of them have looked pretty solid and comfortable next to him as well. So it's a defensive unit that seems to me that's really working.
Yeah, and I suppose that's one of the things when you looked at last season. I've mentioned it already, that the defence, there was questions over our defence last season. So I suppose to start the season, go through the 3 games and concede 1 goal. I said before, I've missed the Montrose and Dundee games, so it's hard for me to comment on Foster in particular. But I know exactly what we'll have got out of Taggart at centre half. Like I said, I'm a fan of moving him there. I would have been looking to move him to centre half this season. I agree with you. I still expect to see him probably quite a lot at right back this season. I think that will happen. But I like him at centre half. You said it, like his distribution. Again, as you said, he'll carry out a defence. And I think when you looked last season, particularly when Stevie Hetherington was missing, you needed a centre half that was able to do that. I think when Stevie's there, you see Stevie will drop right in deep, and he'll take the ball from the centre halves, and he'll look to be that quarterback and build it. But those games when Stevie wasn't there, you needed a centre half who was comfortable coming out with the ball. And look at what was there last season. Morgan Neal, that ain't Morgan Neal's game at all. David Devine can do it.
Yeah.
David Devine can certainly do it. Dave Mackay,
He can do it as well.
He's kind of in between. He'll not do it the same way a Taggart or Devine will, but he'll certainly do it better than Morgan Neil would, for example. But I think Taggart, he's mega comfortable in that role. I think as well, if you've then got Devine next to him, I think that I could see that partnership working quite well because of Devine's build, the height there. It'll allow him to go up and challenge more, and Taggart has that brain that he will fill in where it's needed. Someone commenting on Pine Bovril, I should have picked up who it was. They mentioned about it kind of gave them the vibes of we had him on loan from Celtic and he's at Command, Robbie Dees. When Robbie Dees was in, I think that was the season Andy was injured with his back, and Taggart basically played the whole season alongside Robbie Dees at centre half, and it was exactly the same. You seen Robbie Dees was that physicality and would go up and Taggart just acted as like a sweeper. I could see that working the same with Devine. I will say in the Bonnyrigg game, I actually thought Bonnyrigg were really poor. Like no bones about it. Bonnyrigg weren't up to much, but I will say even with that level of opposition, I thought Devine and Mackay, I thought the pair of them had a really good solid game at the back. So that was encouraging signs to see from kind of Dave Mackay's point of view as well. I did think they had a really strong game, but it bodes well. I think as well, the fact that McFarlane in behind them hopefully is able to bring that bit of confidence. It seems strange saying that about a young goalkeeper who's on loan from but I just get McFarlane as a supporter. He gives me that feeling, the confidence and a bit of reliability, and I hark back to it, but I think the communication is part of it. I feel if I'm a central defender, when I'm hearing my goalkeeper shouting as he's coming for it, and even kind of marshalling the game when we're standing behind the goal, you could hear him marshalling as well. I just think that just breeds confidence. I would think it would breed confidence into a defender as well. So that's obviously a big positive. I don't think you can look past how much of an impact Stevie Hetherington will have on this as well. Again, not seen the Montrose and Dundee games, but certainly when he came on against Bonnyrigg, he solidified that midfield, because there was a period in that second half where Bonnyrigg just started to have sort of 5-10 minutes where they started to come into it. Changes were made. Hetherington and Curtis Roberts came on, and Stevie just filled that gap.
Yeah.
Just solidified everything up and just ran the show from there. So I think having Stevie Hetherington back playing that role will also make a huge contribution to what's happening at the back.
Yeah, I think just in general, the midfield have been excellent in the first couple of games. I think when you look back to the team that played against Bonnyrigg, I think you can look at that game in isolation, because the conditions of the pitch and the conditions of the weather as well. It was so hot that day. I think I just got back from holiday, so I never managed to travel up from it, but I tried to walk the dog around the block and I couldn't even do that. So the fact of playing 90 minutes of football on such what looked like a dry, bumpy, not cohesive surface was impressive. But obviously we played a lot of young players that day, so it wasn't quite how the midfield will look across the season. And fair play to them, I think the young boys have done well in terms of Reece Mullen and Lewis Bruin, and I think Luke Watkins played against Bonnyrigg as well.
Watkins did well in pre-season. I thought he had a good pre-season.
They've all showed up well, and they look like there'll be options going forward across the season. They'll look at guys like Cammy and Stephen and see that as inspiration.
Cammy's had a good pre-season as well.
I would agree, and I think there's a lot of players that are standing out, and Cammy O'Donnell's one of them that we'll talk about in a second. But for me, in terms of that midfield, you've mentioned Stevie. We've spoke about the importance of Curtis Roberts and how him coming back is such a big boost. But it has been mentioned online, and something that we'll echo here, Stefan Skugel just looks like the fittest and the sharpest that I've seen him at Alloa. He looks like he's had a really good pre-season, and I think Skuggs has had a lot of injuries in the past. He actually had a pretty decent season in terms of contributions with goals and assists, but also just the amount of availability he had. And again, we're seeing the benefits of that now. He's coming into this season off the back of a good campaign, clearly off the back of a decent pre-season as well. And if he plays like that across the season, he could be the best player in the league without exaggerating it. His ceiling in terms of him at his top level is that high. And what I've seen over the last couple of weeks, just having that, like you say, that nice dynamic in midfield, whether it's Cammy, whether it's Curtis or Stevie, just allows Skugel to do what he's really good at, and he's at the level that he's able to do that. And to me, he's probably been one of the ones that I've been most impressed by, along with, like you say, Cammy O'Donnell as well.
Yeah, Skugel's been really good. Just looking there, he's played 270 minutes in the league, so he's played the full 90 minutes for the 3 games. And looking back at last season, 38 games out of him last season, so 32 in the
you see
32
that
in the league, 3 in the League Cup, 2 in Challenge Cup, and 1 in the Scottish Cup. I did think that last season it felt like he's kind of sort of best season from a lack of injuries point of view. It was probably hampered by the fact that he stayed fit when what we say is the 2 starters around him, Stevie and Curtis, have missed so much time that it's meant that Skuggs maybe had to fill a few different roles last season. Whereas if you get the same, if you're getting 30 games, for me, if you get 30 games out of Skugel in a season, that's more that's more than fine by me. 30 games for Skugel, that you're going to get a lot of production out of that, particularly if you've then got the likes of Stevie Hetherington, Curtis Roberts fit for the majority of the season. Cammy O'Donnell, seen him play well in the centre of the park last season as well. That's good signs. Again, as I say, I missed the Dundee game, but certainly the kind of feedback from that is Skugel was an absolute standout on Saturday as well. So, yeah, if he's fit in that kind of form, he is, as you say, he is up there with the best that there is in this division. You could argue quite comfortably that he's a level above this division. We've said before, the reason he's at Alloa is because he had injury problems. Without those, he would have been still at a higher level than with ourselves. And it's us that gets the benefit. We get the benefit of, we get Skugel, and if you're getting 30 plus games out of him a season, even better.
And I think we're probably now past that point. Like, we're past that point with Stefan Skugel that we've only got him because of the injuries. Because, like you say, he played a lot of games of football last year.
Yeah,
he clearly really likes the place. He clearly likes playing under the manager, being at Alloa. I know he had offers in the summer from other clubs as well. So when he's enjoying his football and he feels like he can play at that level as well, he clearly doesn't see a reason to leave.
He's a class above.
Exactly.
He's such a classy player. And I kind of look back to the most talented players. I've seen, and Flanny's always the one that'll stand out. But I tell you what, Skugel's up in terms of actual ability.
Yeah,
he's a hell of a talented guy.
It's just such a joy to watch Stefan Skugel when he is that sharp. He has such a low sense of gravity, and every time he takes the ball, or majority of the times he takes the ball, it's always on the back foot in the half turn. And I just love that. He doesn't need that touch, and then that kind of laboured turn that you see a lot in the lower leagues of Scotland, just taking that extra beat. He's so quick with the drop of the shoulder, and that can really drive Alloa up the park. And we've seen that across the League Cup games, and we've seen other players benefit from it as well. I think you're right to highlight Cammy O'Donnell, and we can talk about his contributions across the Cup campaign as well. He looks like he's stepping up once more. Last season we spoke about, it's a big year for the guys like Cammy O'Donnell, and he stepped up, and he's gone away over the summer, and he's come back, and he's stepped up once again, because he is now one of the more senior players, especially when you've got guys like Bruin and Mullen coming on. They're looking up to Cammy O'Donnell, and he's stepping up to the plate. A man of the match performance on Tuesday, but most notably, he's probably put his name in to reclaim his goal of the season as well.
He's got competition already. I mean, that the first 2 games of the season. I mean, the first minute of the season.
Luke Rankin.
Certainly the first two games of the season, and you've got two goals that will be in contention for goal of the season already. I mean, Luke Rankin's totally instinctive finish against, but as soon as it left his foot, I said the boy next, I said, that's it.
And I love that.
You can just see the trajectory. It's like it's perfect, and it's in. And then Cammy's free kick is that's Cammy can do that. He's playing against Montrose. That's what happens when he plays against Montrose.
Yeah, and such a casual celebration as well. If I'd scored that goal, I would still doing laps of that old AstroTurf just now in celebration. Such a good finish. But both of them, like you say, really, really nice finishes. I think Luke Rankin, I'm expecting more from him this season. Not because he did badly last season. He was excellent last season. But again, it looks like he's bulked up once more. It looks like he's sharper, more intelligent. He's got a season under his belt at League One level, and he was comfortably in the double figures last season. And I think the only way is up for Luke Rankin. His potential is very high, and I'm encouraged that again we seem to be backing him as our main striker, because instinctively he is one of those strikers that is just such a natural finisher, and does
Yeah.
so well in between the sticks, but also, like you've seen on Saturday, that's a really hard goal. The touch and the finish on a surface like that. 2 minutes into the season as well. It's not like he's had much time to warm up or get a feel for the ball. Really, really good, and hopefully again we could just see improvements in look as well.
I think as I've obviously got the goal against Bonnyrigg and seen him score against Civil Service in pre-season. He's also touching it. He's missing against Bonnyrigg as a contender will be a contender for miss of the season.
I think it's the pitch. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt.
Do you know who I felt really sorry was Bruin? He'd done so well with the build up. And Bruin, he had a good game against Bonnyrigg, but he'd done so well in the build up. And do you know what? He probably should have had a go himself, but he put it, laid it on a plate for Luke Rankin. He put it over, and then against Dundee, Rankin has the best chance of the 90 minutes when he goes through in the second half. But the encouragement for me is he's in those positions and he's in those chances. This is the start. That's one thing I'll say. At the start of the season, they're not up to speed yet, and those are the kind of things you look 2 or 3 months into the season. Luke Rankin's going to be burying every single one of those. But the fact that one, that we're creating those opportunities just now, but two, Luke Rankin's getting himself in those positions already at this stage of the season. We've seen last year he had a really, really good League Cup campaign to start last season as well, and it's looking like it's similar this year. So hopefully, as you say, he builds on that and just takes another step up. Not that it was a disappointment or anything last year. I agree with you. It's just looking for, let's look at that, another year in. Let's look at this next step up that he can take, because there's a potential there of a really, really, really good player. So that's certainly been encouraging. I was trying to look there to see what the Airdrie Montrose score was, but I never realised they're actually playing tomorrow night. So we'll need to wait and see what we need to do on Saturday. But yeah, it's been an encouraging start. I'll say as well, and you'll love this, the role Sam was playing.
Of course. Yeah,
absolutely perfect. And you see that against Dundee for the goal. He just comes on and he just causes chaos and he causes uncertainty amongst defenders and opposition keepers. I love the role that he's playing, and if that's how we're going to the season, look as that starter, knowing that we've got Samo there for 10 minutes here, 20 minutes there. He might start an odd game here or there, kind of thing. I love that role.
I had a few sleepless nights wondering if he was going to stay. I wasn't ready for the potential departure list with his name on it, but yeah, delighted that he's here. He's such a good character off the park, in the dressing room, and like you say, he'll cause chaos, and he will still score eight or so goals this season, guaranteed. Yeah, he'll be in the right areas. He'll be poaching, just so good in between the sticks in the 6-yard box, and he'll contribute massively across the season. And what I've also quite liked as well, like I say, I wasn't at too many games in person last season, just with work being down south. But when I was there for the League Cup games this year, when we're looking at the subs at half time, it's Samuel that's setting the cones out, it's Samuel that's kind of doing that. So you see that leadership quality, and I love Andy, and I hope he's our manager for many, many years to come. But there's a role for Connor Salmon in the suit one day. I can see it if I shut my eyes and dream. But I'm more than happy with Andy. Don't want that to come across the wrong way. But great to see him. Great option, and it's been a positive League Cup campaign, and it's mad that we go into the final game on 9 points, needing something, because normally
it certainly looks that way. Looks that way. I mean, there's obviously this Tuesday night we're recording. There's games ongoing just now, and I do not have the time or the brain capacity to try and work out with what's in play just now of where it would be. But I think certainly by Wednesday evening, once the Airdrie Montrose game's taking place, we'll have a pretty good idea of what we need to do. It does look like 9 probably won't be enough just because of our goal difference. I think there is a possibility 9 points will get some teams through, but we're going to be way too low on the goal difference if it's 9 we finish. However, I would say 10 looks like it probably will be enough. Obviously, a win and we're through with 12 points. A win on penalties, we'll be through with 11 points as group winners as well. But a loss on penalties would get us to 10, which should should be enough to
And I
get
think
us through.
and I think 10 would get both us and Airdrie through. So if they win on Wednesday
Yeah,
night, maybe we should have a wee gentleman's agreement and
I
just
think it's interesting. I think if we finish on 10, there is still the possibility of us not making it
oh
through
right,
because of our
really.
goal difference. But if it went to penalties and we won it and we finish on 11 and Airdrie finish on 10 because of their goal difference or how it should be after tomorrow night, they will then get through. So I think
Yeah.
if we win on penalties, both will most likely get through. So
It's
I've seen the disgrace of Gijón has been mentioned, and I'd be more than happy for that to take place.
it's exciting, and I'm just so glad that we went into the last year's final day with something to play for. We've done the same again, so there's whatever happens on Saturday, there's going to be encouragement going into the season. But what I really liked, I just took a back seat in Andy's interview on Tuesday night, as I think it was Chris that maybe asked the question: does winning tonight give us a free hit or take the pressure off? Can't remember the exact
Yeah.
words off of Dundee, and he was very much no, it doesn't, because we are here to win every game. We're here to qualify, and I love that attitude, and that's something that has always encouraged me when listening to Andy Graham, that we don't settle for draws, we don't settle for plucky underdog stories. We're here to qualify, we're here to win, and if we can go and beat a Premiership team in Dundee, we can go to Airdrie and we can take points off of them as well, and it's going to be a real cracker on Saturday. I think it's going to be an exciting game.
Yeah, it's not going to be easy. Is the one I
No.
never fancy us really against Adrian, and certainly away from home. It's been a pretty long time since we last won there, so it's going to be difficult. Obviously, Adrian have tucked away Dundee earlier in the group stages as well, and we're kind of saying this, assuming that they are going to beat Montrose tomorrow night. You know, we'll need to wait and see what happens, but yeah, the fact that, as you say, we're going into the final, game of the groups, and we've got everything to play with. It's in our own hands.
Yeah, exactly.
Ultimately,
Yeah.
it's in our own hands going into Saturday. I think I said after the Bonnyrigg game that, winning at Bonnyrigg, yeah, it was 1-0, and it wasn't a vintage performance in it, but it was the first game of the season. You're away, a now Lowland League side, and away to at almost like a neutral ground, pretty much, with it being Whitehall Welfare's ground. It was all about just winning that game, and I kind of felt the same against Montrose. I fancied us against Montrose, but for me it was, if you beat Bonnyrigg, if you beat Montrose, as long as you then avoided a real kind of doing against Dundee and Airdrie, that to me, I'd have looked at that as that's a good enough League Cup campaign to put you in a positive enough state going into the league campaign then. So the fact that they've went better than that, obviously beat Bonnyrigg, beat Montrose, and then you go and beat a Premier team in the form of Dundee. It's whatever happens on Saturday, it's been a successful, and it will have been a successful league group campaign, and more positive than can be for going into the league the week after.
Exactly. I'm looking forward to Saturday. Like you say, plenty to play for, and yeah, it's we can go into it with much encouragement. As we close off this episode, we will touch upon the women's team and what has been an exciting summer. Not too much that we can say just now, though. I think we're still waiting on quite a few of the announcements. We will be having a special episode where we cover all things of the women's team, because the discussions that we've had with Alan and the club about what's to come with the women's team is incredibly exciting. The future there, in terms of incomings, in terms of ambitions, in terms of future plans. So we will absolutely shine the light on that in a much bigger scale than at the end of this episode. But it has been an encouraging summer in terms of a retention list, which has been quite high. A lot of players that we've come to know from on the score sheets from their positive performances last season. Does sound like there's plenty of incomings as well that are imminently yet to be announced, and some strong performances in pre-season as well. So there's plenty happening on the women's side with Alan's team as well, and it's going to be exciting to cover that side of things as the season goes ahead.
Yeah, they've had three pre-season games already so far. So beat Jamefield Swifts quite comfortably a couple of weekends ago. Defeat midweek against Renfrew Ladies, and then one, was it 6-0? Against Standard Hall.
Yeah, 6-0.
Minors on at the weekend.
The last game on the surface. That's the legacy.
Of course it would be. Yeah, I never even thought about that. But yeah, it's I would be quite quite excited about the women's team this year. I think when you looked, I messaged Alan when I seen the retained list that came out, and he's retained a good from seeing quite a bit of them last year. He's retained a real good solid core of that team. You know, players like Susie McTaggart, I think, is constantly threatened to retire. I'm sure when we finished up last season, she was planning retirement yet again, but she's obviously back. And seeing the likes of Shannon Mulligan, Terry Deegan should be back this year as well. And then, you know, names Amy Cully that we've seen for the last couple of years, Bailey Black, quite exciting players there. So I would be a little bit excited about what's happening with the women's team this year. I fancy them to have a pretty good successful season. I know they've got the kind of the regional sort of, I believe it's sort of like the kind of the version of the kind of regional League Cup coming up as well. So it'd be good to see more supporters that can get down to the Rex on a Sunday. I know their games, certainly their home games this year, are due to all be 2 p.m. kickoffs as opposed to 4 p.m. that they've been previously. So certainly for me that's a positive. Much prefer them a little bit earlier on, but get down and watch the women's team. You get a pie. Joyce's Pie Hut's always open, so you get a pie in Bovril there for watching it as well, and give them a bit of encouragement, because I think there's going to be a fair bit to be excited about with them this season.
Yeah, it's an ambitious group of players and staff that are involved in the women's team, and it's something that's excited the two of us when we're speaking about it. So we'll definitely both be there. The competitive games start away from home on the 10th of August. Both teams are going to just spend a little bit of time away from the Rex, but one for your diary, 31st of August is the first home game in the Regional Cup against Linlithgow Rose, and that, like you say, hopefully by then there's going to be plenty of exciting announcements out. And us in the Wasps Nest podcast, I don't want to say too much because we're still kind of padding out what it's going to be, but a first for us and a first for the women's team as well, as we try to shine the light and they can showcase their characters and their ambition as well, because it's all well and good us two talking about what to be excited about, but it's better to come from the horse's mouth. So get them on, and it's going to be an exciting piece of content in the lead up to that first big home game at the Rex. So yeah, plenty to look forward to in the coming weeks, and like I said at the start of it, we've got a lot of making up to do for our couple of months absence, so we will try our best.
I tell you, can I finish up? How good do the new strips look, by the way?
They look good.
I think they look absolutely, particularly seeing them in person, I think they look class. I love this sort of like little fading on the edge of the kind of bands as it gets to the sides. I think the kit looks class this year.
It looks smart. It definitely looks smart. I think the first we've seen of it was on Daniel Church, or I think Calvin Orsley also held it up, but you could only see half of it. So we've been teased by it, but it looks smart. It looks good. Although it does seem like maybe a couple of youth players could maybe do it with a size or two smaller. Some of them are huge, but it's class. I think that's the good thing about doing the podcast. We can talk about the good things that are happening. We can be encouraged by the League Cup performances and all the different stuff that's going on. And we've managed to keep it under 70 minutes as well. I think we can leave the KDM Evolution Trophy for another day, because I think to explain the format of that, it'll take us another 70 minutes. So
I'll be quite frank. You can get it in the sea for all I care about it. We might mention about it when it comes to game time, because to be fair, they're only a couple of games away until they start the games. But that's for another day, I think.